The success of West Indies bowling attacks have always been closely aligned with the quality of their fast bowlers. History shows that the Caribbean side's four-pronged pace attack of the 1970s and 80s changed how the game was played. But by the turn of the 20th century, there was a dearth of quality fast bowlers in the region. In fact, when Curtly Ambrose retired in the year 2000 and Courtney Walsh followed in 2001, the Windies were left without any world-class fast bowler. The depth of quick bowling that terrorized the world's best batsmen for decades seemed a thing of the past, and for the most part, that's how it has been ever since. But in 2017, there appeared a glimmer of hope. The Windies put together a unit that included Jason Holder, Shannon Gabriel, Kemar Roach, and the then newcomer Alzarri Joseph, that according to pure numbers, raw statistics, was among the best in the world for a 2.5-year period. I know you're saying, really? We're going to show you the numbers to prove it. But as sudden as that rise, so the decline. And now, the Windies fast bowlers are right back where we have become accustomed to seeing them. Ricardo Chambers examines some of the numbers in this piece.
Played him on, and I think he's hit as well.
December 2017 to June 2020, a most promising period for West Indies fast bowlers. In 15 test matches, the Caribbean Pacers took 177 wickets at an average of 21.78. Their strike rate was even more impressive, taking a wicket every 42.9 deliveries. In terms of average and strike rate, only one team in world cricket had better numbers in the said period. That's India, who took 292 wickets at an average of 21.33 and a strike rate of 42.6. The Windies fast bowling renaissance of sorts was led by then-captain Jason Holder. Of all bowlers to take 50 or more wickets in tests, Holder was ranked #1 on average, taking 53 wickets at a sensational average of 14.11. Behind him, Indians Ishant Sharma, who grabbed 71 wickets at 19.14, and Jasprit Bumrah 68 wickets at 20.33. Pakistan's Mohammad Abbas and Australia's Pat Cummins were also in the top 5, both averaging below 21. Shannon Gabriel was 13th on that list, having taken 50 wickets at 24.60. But there were other key players to the Windies pace bowling puzzle. While he didn't hit the 50-wicket mark, Kemar Roach was brilliant, grabbing 46 scalps at a healthy average of 19.82. Alzarri Joseph played his part as well, 10 wickets at 23.80. Miguel Cummins, Keema Paul and Sherman Lewis also played in that period, but none got to 10 wickets and would have hurt the overall team average, as they averaged from 31.50 to 54.00. One would have expected the Caribbean side's quicks to build on the promise shown from December 2017 to June 2020, but it hasn't been the case. In fact, what we have seen is a dramatic fall-off. The Windies fast bowlers between July 2020 and December 2022 averaged 31.63 in tests. Their strike rate is even more appalling. It has fallen from 42.9 to 62. Most notably, India also fell in the July 2020 to December 2022 period. But it is the Windies fall-off, both in terms of average and strike rate, that is most dramatic. So, was 2017 to 2020 just a flash in the pan? And if so, how concerned should we be about the future of fast bowling in the Caribbean? Let's discuss.
And to lead the discussion, we're being joined by cricket commentator Nikhil Uttamchandani. Nikhil, Happy New Year to see you. Happy New Year, good to see you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. Fantastic piece by you guys, and enjoy that one.
Excellent. All right. So we've put the numbers out there. It's now time to analyze the numbers with a view to establishing how, finding out why, and of course looking to see what we can do to change the reality. First up, the fall off in the productivity of the Windies from that 2017 baseline period. Does it have you scratching your head to establish why, or do you know why?
Well, I think it's so funny in terms of cricketing statistics, because you can look at that and say, well, look, the West Indies clearly have had a massive drop-off in terms of where they were in those 3 years. But I mean, you could look back at in terms of the matches itself. If you look at Bangladesh early 2022 when they beat them 2-0, the fast bowling unit averaged under 20, or even that Pakistan test that they won and then drew the series 1-0, it was due to Kemar Roach and Alzari Joseph and their brilliance. So I think a lot comes into play in that number itself. You know, in terms of surfaces that are played on, remember the West Indies played a lot of test cricket, you know, in that period in the last 2 years in Antigua, a lot flatter surfaces, harder for fast bowling. And then also the oppositions that you face. That 2019 series would have weighed heavily in that statistic when the West Indies beat England and triumphed. And that was an England batting unit that, you know, probably left a lot to be desired and had a lot of questions about that batting unit itself. So I think there's a lot to look into it. But that last Australia series tells you, I think that we're not quite at the place where South Africa, who then followed, or where Australia is, and even probably in England now, who have got that resurgence with a Mark Wood, etc. So it's a good measuring stick, but I think you have to put a bit of context into those 3 years.
If we look at personnel, if we look at, again, go baseline and go 2017 and look at the guys who were around. Jason was there operating well. Perhaps people will say, well, he's even better than ever today. Alzari was only emerging. He's establishing himself now. But of course, Roach is oft injured, and that's been the case. So his productivity, there has been disruption in his availability and his productivity. Shannon Gabriel has had his issues with fitness. Would you say that from 2017 till now, the fall off is also partly due, along with what you said just now, to the fact that some of our key actors have been inconsistent in the test team, hence unable to contribute to the numbers being good?
Well, what I would say is, I think one man that you mentioned there, I mean, that core has been pretty consistent in terms of Holder Roach. You've seen Alzari Joseph return to sort of firing at his best and prime form, and even a young Jaden Seals emerged. But I think Shannon Gabriel has been a huge miss. Yes, he's had fitness issues, but you look around the region, and how many bowlers can you find? I picked out 4 who can bowl over 135 plus consistently. Alzari Joseph is one, but really the only one in red ball cricket that can do it at a consistent level. This man, Shannon Gabriel, to me, has been a huge miss. We've seen him in that Sri Lanka series a couple of years ago, even in the England series. And I was just, you know, imagining what that prospect could have been of him actually traveling to Australia and the difference he could have made. You know, obviously 34 years old, but still in that Super 50 that he recently played, showed that he can get up to those paces. So I don't know if it comes down to, in terms of personnel, because I actually think the West Indies fast bowling quartet, you could call them, have actually helped the West Indies to win 3 tests this year. I mean, as I mentioned before, the Bangladesh games, the England series as well. It's just the numbers. And I think, as I said, the surfaces play a big part, the opposition as well. But a great measuring stick would have been that Australia series, and a not fully fit Kemar Roach, you know, a Jaden Seals pulling up after the first test, and then an overwork to look like Alzari Joseph coming on to the end of the year. Definitely it played a part. So I think, look, there'll be signs in terms of how we can build moving forward, but definitely you compare the two sides, South Africa and the West Indies, and you see the difference in pace, and that for me I think is probably the biggest area where we struggle compared to the other world beaters.
Yeah, notwithstanding the difference in pace. Let me go again. We're going to go to the pace numbers in short order. We have them. But here's the thing, though, I want to engage you on. Perhaps it is as well that we talk about, well, we know what the glory years produced and who we produced in the glory years, which stretched for decades. So isn't it clear, Nikhil, that obviously, whereas Australia can have a pace spearhead injured and replace him with someone who's taking wickets quickly, bowling economically, and being a threat, and India can do the same. The fact is that the competition for fast bowling places in the West Indies is fierce in name only because you have to replace somebody with somebody, but there's no quality, there's no depth of quality. And the depth of quality is pronounced when you have Roach injured, Seals injured, Gabriel injured, and that is also a huge part of the reason why the numbers aren't good, why the numbers have declined.
I think you hit the nail on the head, George, and it comes down to 2 things for me. One, surfaces. Are we producing enough fast bowling conducive surfaces in the region to encourage fast bowling? But then someone could say, well, look, Pakistan and India produce flat surfaces, slow surfaces, but still have someone like Umar Malik bowling 155, or India have got, you know, a plethora of fast bowling talent coming through. So I think it comes down to also a culture can we redefine a culture in terms of what we had in the olden days where we get that volume of fast bowlers being produced? It just seems to me now that because of the way that the game is meandering into that 4-over dominance in terms of T20 cricket and its growth with the franchise leagues, we're going away from having those bowlers that can bowl that consistent pace of 135 plus. And as you said, having the quality of reserves and the depth in order to have people to call upon, because we can look at that quartet as pulling the amount of weight, but the minute that they were depleted and Roach was injured, Seals was injured, then you asked Anderson Phillip, who's only played 2 tests, and Marquinhos Mindley, who only lasted a couple overs and was rushed to Australia. It just seems that we don't have the depth. So the pitches have a huge part to play for me, because I think that we just don't produce enough surfaces that, can foster fast bowling. But then also the culture, because Pakistan have got some of the flattest surfaces in the world, but still have found a way to produce that sort of ability and that sort of talent.
Yeah, you use the term culture just now, Nikhil, and I would like to go there because the West Indies has for decades, prior to recent decades, having a culture of fearsome fast bowlers that when they're running in, batsmen quiver, no matter where they are from, Australia, India, South Africa, it doesn't matter. But if we look at the stats for the 22-23 Australia summer cricket, we see some pretty revealing statistics that won't look good for the West Indies and the culture of West Indies tear-away fast bowling. Alzarri Joseph, 141 average kilometres per hour, but then no other West Indies bowler in the high 130s. Kemar Roach 132, Jaden Seals 131. Compare that to the Aussies and the South Africans. Mitchell Starc 143, Pat Cummins 141, and then you get high 30s with Cameron Green at 137. The South Africans with Anrik Norke at 145, and Janssen and Kagiso Rabada both at 137. So if you look at those statistics, for a proud West Indian cricket fan, this is a sad commentary, isn't it?
I think what it comes down to, Lance, is how do we put some sort of fear in oppositions? And the way the game has developed now, when I watch that South Africa-Australia series, I mean, you look at the fast bowling unit from the South Africans taking 24 of the wickets of the Australians. And this is a mighty Australian batting lineup with Khawaja, who's been in the form of his life, with Warner, Smith, Labuschagne, we go on and on. However, you bring that raw pace even to Australia in their own backyard, and all of a sudden it looks like a completely different story. So how do we as West Indians find a way to get and produce bowlers who can bowl these paces? I think Jaden Seals is someone just 21 years old who can possibly become a Kagiso Rabada one day and bowl that consistent level of speed. But as we've talked about, it's the culture. And definitely I think it has to start with the surfaces, but also what do we do in the West Indies to produce that? I know there have been a few clinics in the past, the Pace Like Fire, which was put on by the University of the West Indies to foster fast bowling and its growth. But I think now with this development of the High Performance Centre, can we put a bigger emphasis on producing faster bowlers? I've only picked out 4, Smith, O'Shane Thomas, Shannon Gabriel and Alzarri Joseph, who can get past 135 consistently. I don't think we have any others out of the gazillion seamers that we have in the region. And that's a big, big problem. So it has to start there. And I think when you go to Australia and places like that, even as South Africa, which we will travel to later this year, that's where you see, I think, the cream of the crop being separated.
Yeah, and a couple of those names that you've mentioned aren't playing red ball cricket anyway. So, there lies the extent of the issue that we're facing here. Alzarri Joseph has improved, Nikhil, in the recent past. He was a part of the impressive statistic that Ricardo referenced in his report in that 2017 to 2020 period. But he was younger then. He is better now, and but he's a part of this West Indies bowling setup that is struggling. How satisfied are you with Alzarri's improvement over time? Because we remember him being a part of the 2016 Under-19 World Cup winning team, but he kind of stagnated, but he's beginning to show a lot of quality now.
Yeah, I think there are no questions in terms of his one-day international form. I mean, he's been up in terms of the very best seamers in the world in the last 2 or 3 years. But in the red ball game, I think, first of all, his consistency. He struggled in Australia, but his consistency prior to that series in the red ball format, for me, was a huge just display of how far he's come. It's not an easy format to bowl in terms of Test cricket, especially when you have that raw, genuine pace and ready to be the only one in the West Indies. It shows how important he is. So I think they're going to have to be very careful in terms of how they manage that workload. But I'll take you back to that first test when he put down a spell against Marnus Labuschagne and really challenged him. That's the first time I've ever seen Labuschagne sort of at sea. And he even mentioned it himself. He admitted that he just did not have a clue. But it was unfortunate to see that we couldn't go back to that plan simply because it was just too much of a workload on one person. So I think that small 5 or 6 over period it was at Labuschagne was a great story in terms of how far he's come and what he could be capable of, in the next couple of years.
Yeah, well, you've already pointed to the preparation of pitches in the Caribbean, which needs to be more facilitating to fast bowling and encouraging for fast bowlers developing. But that obviously is a long-term issue. The West Indies' next assignment coming up is against the South Africans on tour. What would be the short-term fix to try to address the potency of the West Indies fast bowling?
Well, I think the first thing is that quartet, and Jaden Sears is going to be missing out. That's a huge loss. But can we find in these 5 first-class matches now, coming up in February, can we find a valid replacement and someone that can really, cause a problem? This is South African batting lineup that we've just seen really struggling, and I think the West Indies have got a golden opportunity. Look, I know it's a long, long shot from here, but a couple of things go our way. We could easily be in the World Test Championship final against that Australia. So it's a perfect opportunity to exploit weaknesses against that South African batting lineup. And I think a lot will be on Alzarri Joseph, his control, but consistency on that in-between length. If he can hit that length, which in South Africa always brings results, I think he can be a handful. And I'm excited to see a Jason Holder as well after some rest and recuperation back to his full firing force with both bat and ball. He's going to be crucially important with that extra height.
With so much wrong with so many aspects of our cricket, Nikhil, do you think it will be beneficial to us, all terms, medium, short and long, to isolate fast bowling and to have a finishing school of thought, of sorts? Because the reason I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking of O'Shane Thomas and when he emerged and how quick he was, how he used to trouble batsmen. And I'm thinking now, can I say on this day in sports that O'Shane Thomas is a better bowler than when he emerged? And I can't say yes. And that's disappointing because he has the benefit of experience. But I look around the Caribbean and I say, well, I can't see anywhere that O'Shane Thomas could go or anybody with the raw tools like him to be molded for us to get more out of a player with those raw talent, with that raw talent and those gifts. And I'm wondering if maybe there should be a focus on that where West Indies cricket is concerned.
I think definitely. Look, our batting has struggled massively in the last couple of years, but I think with Craig Brathwaite as captain, we've shown enough this year in terms of the number of hundreds we've been able to produce that I think the batting is capable of taking care of itself, even against the very best. That Australia series was a perfect example. Where I think now we're missing out is one quality world-class spinner, but then a fast bowling sort of unit that can produce on any surface around the world. And I think that culture starts with the surfaces we mentioned, more green grass on the pitches in the Caribbean. This first-class season is so important. But also, can we find a way to develop the younger talent? Because I'm telling you, George, I've seen a couple in Barbados. I looked at Ramon Simmons, who's been up there in terms of touching that 135 area. Can we develop these youngsters who are 21, 22 years old, but also instill some want or desire to play red ball cricket? Because now we have a franchise tournament every month, and these young talents are being snapped up. How do we find a way to instill that culture and also instill that desire to want to play the longer format?
Hear you on that. Fascinating as always, my friend. Thank you very much for the quality of your contribution today. We'll talk again. All the best.
Cheers, man. Thanks for having me.
Nikhil Chandani. Lance,
Yeah.
So here's the thing. So I asked him about it, and he agrees. I'm troubled that in this part of the world, where a large part of our cricketing success and prowess was built on the backs of the exploits of our fast bowlers, there is no fast bowler finishing school. There's nowhere that we can send some youngsters to say, okay, you emerged at 19 bowling at 135. And I know it's not linear. It's not 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 1 = 3. But you go there and you come back after 8 months and you are 2, 3, 5 kilometers quicker. You are able to sustain pace for longer because you went to that finishing school. I find it amazing. We have nothing like that.
Yeah, well, the home of West Indies cricket at the moment, based on the Secretariat and so on, is in Antigua, which has Andy Roberts and Curtly Ambrose and so on. A lot of the camps are staged there in Antigua and Barbuda. I wonder if that could be somewhere that, well, not that Ambrose and Andy Roberts being there means that others couldn't travel there.
Right.
But as I said, it has been the hub for training camps and so on. But I think something has to be done with that in mind, because of the history of West Indies cricket. And I know that, you know, it's easy for us to pine about what West Indies cricket used to be. But the fact is, because of our athleticism and our physical strength as Caribbean people, fast bowling is something that the West Indies should be dominating. Yes. And the past 10 minutes of this show is highlighting a very serious deficiency in that regard.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. So you spoke of Sir Andy and Sir Curtly in Antigua at the headquarters. So already we've satisfied ourselves and satisfied everybody that it's not about the guidance that we don't have, because in those two men we have all the guidance we need in the hole to bowl quickly. But I'm certain that the program that they are presiding over is not of the kind that we are speaking about. And the consistency and the tools that they need to roll out a plan and say, all right, gentlemen and ladies, because we have the women doing well now, this is what I need to be able to. You bring me a 17-year-old, you bring me a 19-year-old and say, okay, make this fast bowler stronger. Give him the initiation to be able to bowl quicker for longer. Give them a possibility to increase that pace. Give them a shot delivery. Give this young girl that I have a shot delivery. She can bowl 2 of these in every over or 5 of them in every 4-over spell. That's not, I don't think, what they are presiding over, and that is the problem. These men, we already have the people who can impart the knowledge. Give them the structure around.
But you know, in our under-19 cricket, George, I'm pretty certain that there is a point structure designed to give bonus points for fast bowling success. That's at the under-19 level. So that, in a way, a small way maybe, one measure of trying to encourage 17, 18, 19-year-olds to bowl fast.
But that's not the system, though, Lance. That's just encouraging the individual himself to run in and try to bowl fast. What I'm saying is giving Sir Curtly and Sir Andy a system to implement.
And you're just calling 2 names there because there are several others that we could go to.
You mentioned them, so I'm just going there. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. Oh, boy. Still to come. Let me just say that we have a batting breakdown to come as well in the coming weeks or so.
But of course.
Batting has been a huge problem as well.
Batting has broken down.
Still to come on the SportsMax Zone, Lakers and Nets in the spotlight during our NBA segment. We'll also talk La Liga and how Barcelona have opened a 3-point lead over Real Madrid. Madrid suffering defeat at the weekend, Barca finding a way to secure the 3-point advantage.
Thank you for watching SportsMax on YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and to click the notification bell to stay informed.